Sunlight pours through my parents' bay windows, scattering across the crystal glasses like tiny prisms. The familiar weight of tradition settles over me as I adjust the burgundy linen napkin on my lap, breathing in the comforting aroma of Mom's pot roast. At the head of the gleaming mahogany table, Dad stands poised, carving the roast with his usual precision. Each slice lands neatly on the Wedgwood china he reserves for Sunday dinners. "Just a small piece for me, Dad," I say, watching as he ignores my request and serves me a generous portion anyway. "You're too thin, Gabrielle," he says, not bothering to look up. "Always have been?" I'm about to remind him that at 38 I can decide how much to eat for myself when the front door bursts open. The peaceful scene collapses into chaos as my sister Vanessa sweeps in with her husband Mark and their 3 kids. The room instantly fills with sound backpacks thudding to the floor, children squabbling over chairs, Mark's heavy footsteps crossing the hardwood. "Sorry we're late," Vanessa announces, not sounding the least bit sorry. Her eyes sparkle with a strange excitement that immediately puts me on edge. Traffic was terrible by the outlet mall. "You went shopping before Sunday dinner?" I ask, but my voice is drowned out by Mom's delighted greeting to her grandchildren. Dad catches Vanessa's eye and gives her a small, knowing nod, one that makes something tighten in my chest. I know that look. It's the same secret exchange they've shared since we were kids, usually right before I found out I'd been left out of some family plan. "Well, we're all here now," Mom says cheerfully, patting the table. Charles finished serving so we can eat while it's hot. We fall into the familiar rhythm of passing dishes and polite conversation. Mom asks about my latest architectural project. Dad quizzes Mark about the stock market. The children complain about their vegetables in between bites. So Vanessa says suddenly, her voice cutting through the chatter, "We're moving into your lake house next week." My fork stops halfway to my mouth. "What?" "It's just sitting empty anyway," Gabriel, Dad says lightly, though his eyes flick toward me watchful. "I get the blue bedroom," Vanessa's oldest son shouts, bouncing in his chair. "No fair. Mom said I could have that one," his sister protests. Their argument fades into background noise as realization settles over me. The children have already chosen their bedrooms. This wasn't a spontaneous announcement, it was planned, discussed, and decided long before I sat down at this table. "Your lake house has plenty of room," Mom adds, as if that settles everything. "And they won't be there forever. 6 years. 6 years I've spent restoring that lakeside property. $420,000 to buy it, another $95,000 for essential repairs. I handled the flood damage alone 3 years ago, while they were off cruising the Caribbean, weeks spent salvaging warped hardwood floors and replacing drywall. That house isn't just property to me. It's where I rebuilt myself after the divorce, where I learned to fall asleep without checking the locks 3 times, where I finally started breathing again. Family needs to help family." Vanessa says, her voice carrying the polished tone of a speech she's clearly rehearsed. "We'd do the same for you. And it'll only be for 7 months until the foundation work is complete," Dad adds. Mark studies his plate, the heavy silence around him saying more than he ever could. He's in on this too, just not proud of it. I place my napkin neatly beside my plate, a small, quiet motion that somehow draws every eye to me. Something shifts inside, a calm certainty that feels both startling and long overdue. "Gabrielle, you're always so particular about your things," Mom says, waving away my unspoken protest as though it's trivial. "This is what families do," Gabriel, Dad adds, his voice taking on that familiar, patronizing tone he uses whenever he's sure he's right. "We help each other." Vanessa's lips curve into a smug smile, widening as she watches me, sensing yet another victory in our lifelong pattern. She has always taken. I have always given. And our parents have always enabled it. Not this time. I reach for my handbag draped over the chair beside me, pull out a crisp manila folder and lay it flat on the table. "The contractors start Monday next week," I say. opening the folder to reveal renovation contracts and city permits, each page stamped and signed 3 months ago. It's a full 9-month renovation, everything down to the studs. Silence falls over the table, thick, abrupt, suffocating. Dad's knife hovers mid-air above the roast. Mom's glass remains frozen halfway to her lips. Vanessa's smile collapses. I take a slow, deliberate sip of water, surprised by the steadiness of my own hand. The crystal catches the light, scattering tiny rainbows across the tablecloth. Beautiful, sharp-edged prisms that no one else seems to see. The quiet in the dining room deepens, heavy enough to feel like a physical weight. I watch as realization spreads across their faces. The manila folder lies between us like a loaded gun. For once, Vanessa's polished smile is gone. "You can't be serious." She finally manages, her voice pitching higher. "We've already given notice at our apartment." "Where are we supposed to go?" I take another sip of water, letting the silence stretch. Memories flicker, every instance of Vanessa's entitlement flashing like old slides in my mind. The weekend she borrowed my car that turned into 2 months. The cracked windshield that was already like that. The $3,000 loan that somehow became $18,000 and was never repaid. The spare key she secretly made, the one I discovered only when I found her using my shower without asking. "You'll have to find somewhere else." I say, my voice calm, steady. "The contractors start Monday. Gabrielle." Dad sets down the carving knife, his corporate negotiator tone sliding neatly into place, the one meant to disarm difficult clients. "Be reasonable about this. Your sister has 3 children. And foundation issues," Mom adds, quickly nodding for emphasis. "You can't expect them to live in an unsafe house." "I don't," I reply evenly. "I expect them to find their own housing solution that doesn't involve taking mine." Vanessa's eyes narrow. She glances at Dad, and I catch the exchange instantly, the same silent strategy session they've perfected over decades. The same look they shared when I was 16 and discovered they'd emptied my college fund to pay for her wedding. The choreography of manipulation hasn't changed. I could recite the next lines before they speak them. "But we've already started packing," Vanessa says, her voice shifting from demanding to desperate right on cue. "The moving truck is scheduled for Monday morning." "This will break your father's heart," Mom whispers, reaching dramatically for Dad's hand, playing her part with flawless timing. My phone buzzes on my lap. A text from Miguel, my contractor, "All materials delivered. We're ready for Monday morning, 7 a.m. sharp." Another notification follows, "Smart lock system active." Something warm unfurls in my chest. Not anger, not anxiety, but confidence. While they were plotting their ambush, I was preparing. The security company finished installation last week. The renovation permits are filed, stamped, and approved. I've done everything by the book. "What about storage for our furniture?" Vanessa asks, the edge of panic creeping into her voice. Mark finally speaks, still staring at his plate. "We could at least store things in the garage temporarily." "The garage is being converted into a home gym," I say evenly. "Everything's coming down to the studs. You'll regret putting renovation before family," Vanessa hisses, summoning tears that glisten perfectly on cue. I've seen this performance too many times. Holidays, birthdays, every occasion that didn't bend her way. The tears appear and vanish with the same mechanical precision as ever. Dad leans forward, lowering his voice. "Gabrielle, this situation could impact certain decisions about the future." There it is, the inheritance threat. Right on schedule. "What about the children?" Mom cries, her voice trembling with rehearsed distress. "They'll be homeless." I smooth the napkin on my lap, folding it carefully, each crease deliberate. The weight of their expectations presses against my shoulders, a lifetime of obligations dressed up as love, but it no longer crushes me. "Poor planning on your part doesn't constitute an emergency on mine," I say, meeting Dad's eyes. Recognition flickers across his face. They're his own words, his mantra from years of boardroom negotiations turned back on him. I rise, collecting my purse and the manila folder. I've respected my contractual obligations. You should respect my boundaries. Sit down, Gabrielle. Dad's voice hardens a command sharpened by decades of authority. We're not finished discussing this. I am. Vanessa's oldest son looks up confused by the tension thickening the air. But I already told my friends about my new lake house bedroom. It's not your bedroom, I say softly. And it's not your lake house. I turn and walk toward the door, my heels striking the hardwood with steady finality. Behind me, the familiar chorus of protests and pleas rises, but I don't look back. The front door closes behind me with a soft click. Quiet, clean, and far more decisive than any slam. Outside, the autumn air fills my lungs crisp, grounding real. I walk to my car, ignoring the twitch of the dining room curtain as Mom peers out watching me leave. My phone lights up with Dad's name before I've even backed out of the driveway. By the time I reach the highway, there are 12 missed calls. Only when the distance stretches 20 miles of open interstate between us do my hands start to shake against the steering wheel. The adrenaline crash comes hard, trembling fingers, shallow breaths. But beneath the physical tremor, my resolve stays firm. I pull into a rest stop park beneath a flickering light and dial Miguel's number. Make sure the security system is fully operational by tomorrow morning, I tell him when he answers. And could you move the dumpsters directly in front of the garage doors? I'm concerned about unauthorized access. Already planned on it, he says, a trace of amusement in his voice. After what happened during the flood repairs, I figured your family might try something. I tighten my grip on the phone. He remembers. Someone remembers that I handled the flood damage alone 3 years ago, while the rest of them were sipping cocktails somewhere in the Caribbean. The locks are changed, Miguel continues, and we've installed cameras at every entry point. The shaking in my hands eases. I'm not alone in this. Thank you, I say quietly. I'll see you Monday morning. As the call ends, a text from Vanessa flashes across the screen. Dad's furious. Fix this now. I switch the phone to silent and place it face down on the passenger seat. The evening sky deepens to indigo as I merge back onto the highway, headlights stretching into the dark. I'm heading home, not to the lake house, which is already transforming into something new, something entirely mine, but to the apartment where I finally learned to sleep through the night without checking the locks 3 times. Tomorrow they'll escalate. I know it with absolute certainty. But for the first time in our family's long history, I'm ready. Monday morning arrives with the low rumble of an engine that doesn't belong. I pause at my kitchen window, coffee mug suspended halfway to my lips, watching a moving truck lumber slowly up the narrow gravel drive of my lake property. The burgundy logo on its side gleams faintly in the dawn light, the same shade as Vanessa's lipstick at that awful Sunday dinner. My phone vibrates against the counter, the 5th call from Dad since dawn. I silence it without looking, gathering the folder of permits I'd shown them at dinner. The weight of it feels different now. Solid. Not just paper, but armor. By the time I reach the lake house, Ray and his crew have already established a neat perimeter of orange safety cones. Sawhorses block the driveway entrance, forcing the moving truck to idle at the roadside. I park behind Ray's pickup and step into the crisp autumn air, thick with pine and the faint hum of chainsaw exhaust. Miss Morgan Ray greets me with a nod, clipboard in hand, 6 workers in hard hats standing at attention behind him. We've got the demolition permits posted as required. Interior stripping begins in 30 minutes. Thank you, I say, scanning the property. I see we have unexpected visitors. Ray's weathered face stays neutral, but his eyes flick toward the truck. They arrived about 10 minutes ago. Claimed they had your permission to move in today. The moving truck's door slams open. Vanessa steps out, designer sunglasses perched on her head, her face flushed an angry red that deepens when she sees me. What the hell is going on? She demands, striding toward me. These men won't let our movers through. I meet her halfway, stopping just far enough away that her voice has to carry across the gravel. The security guard I hired stands beside Ray, arms crossed, silent and steady, a quiet line of defense. As I explained to you last Sunday, I say evenly, lifting the permits for her to see the renovation begins today. The property isn't habitable during construction. You can't be serious. Vanessa snaps, her voice rising until the crew pauses their work to glance over. We've already given notice at our place. Where are we supposed to go? I reach into my bag and pull out an envelope. This might help. She stares at it but doesn't take it. What is that supposed to be? It's a 6-month lease for a storage unit, I reply. Already paid in full. Fine. She folds her arms, glaring. Storage. We need somewhere to live, not somewhere to store our stuff. Your housing isn't my responsibility, Vanessa. The words come smoother than I expect, steady and final. Your foundation issues didn't appear overnight. You've had time to make arrangements. Her eyes narrow, scanning my face for weakness. Finding none, she turns toward the house with sudden purpose. I still have a key, she says sharply. We'll work around your little project. That won't work. I follow her at a measured pace as she strides up the front steps. Vanessa jams the key into the lock. Nothing. She twists harder, the metal scraping uselessly. A crisp, mechanical voice breaks the tension. Welcome to Secure Home Systems. Unauthorized entry attempt detected at main entrance, alerting property owner and security service. The robotic announcement echoes from the small speaker beside the door just as my phone vibrates with the alert. Vanessa spins around, eyes blazing. You changed the locks last week. I tilt my head toward the discreet cameras mounted beneath the eaves. The police have been notified of potential trespassing. Standard security protocol. Something fractures in her face, her composure, her control. The polished entitlement gives way to something raw, almost childlike. You can't do this to us, she sputters. We're family respects boundaries, I say quietly, surprised by the calm in my own voice. My phone rings again, right on cue. It's the security company. I answer, confirm that the alert was triggered by my sister, not an intruder, and end the call within seconds. When I look up, Vanessa has retreated to the moving truck. Through the windshield, I can see her gesturing wildly at Mark, who sits motionless in the passenger seat, face pale and drawn. Ray approaches, removing his hard hat. We're ready to begin whenever you are. Ms. Morgan, he says, clipboard in hand. The interior timeline's tight. I'd like the master suite demolished by Thursday. Let's proceed. I sign the clipboard with a steady hand. He hesitates, lowering his voice. Your sister seems determined. Should we expect interference? Before I can respond, the moving truck engine roars to life. Instead of backing up, it jerks forward, swerving off the gravel and onto the lawn. Hey, Ray shouts as tires chew into the grass, crushing the ornamental shrubs I planted last spring. The truck lurches to a stop barely 20 feet away. The back door slams open. Movers, clearly hired muscle, jump down, lowering the ramp with practiced efficiency. Despite Ray's orders to stand down, they begin unloading furniture. Vanessa climbs down from the truck's cab, a triumphant smile plastered across her face. Since you won't be reasonable, she calls out, voice carrying over the lawn, we'll just have to store things here temporarily. The yard will work fine until you come to your senses. The first piece, an ornate mahogany dresser that once belonged to our grandmother, lands on the grass with a dull thud. Mark trails behind the movers, looking miserable but obedient, his eyes fixed anywhere but mine. I don't move. Instead, I unlock my phone and tap a number I saved yesterday. Lakeside Auction House. Yes, this is Gabrielle Morgan. My tone stays calm, measured. I meet Vanessa's eyes as I continue. Yes, please proceed with pickup as discussed. Donate all proceeds to the foster youth program. Vanessa's confident posture falters. Confusion replaces the smugness in her face. They'll be here within the hour, I say, ending the call with a soft click. What auction house? Vanessa demands, stepping closer. The one I contacted yesterday after dinner. I gesture toward the growing mountain of furniture on my lawn. I anticipated this move. Ray clears his throat, standing just behind me. Miss Morgan, we're ready to start demolition. Should we work around the furniture situation? No need, I reply, handing him the final authorization forms. Everything on the property not secured inside the sheds is to be removed today. The rest of the day unfolds with clockwork precision. Construction begins. Hammers echo from inside the house while outside furniture piles rise like strange monuments on the lawn. Vanessa cycles between fury and pleading, first shouting, then sobbing, then shouting again. Mark finally coaxes her back to the truck, promising they'll sort this out tomorrow. They don't return. 2 days later, on Wednesday, the call comes right on schedule. I'm standing in what used to be the master bedroom, the walls stripped bare to the stud sunlight slanting through open beams. My phone vibrates against my jeans. I answer. You heartless bitch! Vanessa's voice detonates through the speaker, ragged and furious. The auction truck took everything that was heirloom furniture. I step outside to hear better over the construction noise. Then it should never have been dumped on property you don't own. Her scream tears through the phone, raw and wordless, but it barely stirs me. Something inside has shifted. The calm I feel isn't an act anymore. It's natural, steady, earned. The boundary I've drawn no longer feels harsh. It feels right, necessary. I've kept all the documentation, I say evenly when her tirade runs out of steam. Photos of the furniture abandoned on private property, security footage of the attempted entry, the police report regarding trespassing warnings. The silence that follows is louder than her shouting ever was. I've also notified the property management company about authorized visitors, I continue. You're welcome to schedule an appointment to see the renovation progress with advance notice. Mom and Dad are coming to talk sense into you. She spits finely, her voice brittle with fury. I glance at my watch, then toward the construction foreman, who raises a thumb in silent acknowledgement. Perfect timing, I murmur. Let them see exactly what they can't take from me. As I end the call, the rhythmic pounding of demolition resumes. The workers swing their sledgehammers through what would have been Vanessa's master suite. Plaster and dust explode into sunlight, and the old wall gives way, gone in seconds. The room floods with natural light, golden and clean. For the first time in years, I breathe deeply here. The air smells of sawdust and possibility instead of expectation and guilt. A soft chime from the security system cuts through the noise vehicles approaching the property. I step onto the porch, blueprints rolled under my arm, and watch my parents' car ease to a stop beside the excavator. The demolition inside ends with impeccable timing. The final wall collapses in a cloud of dust as I turn to greet them, standing framed by sunlight pouring through exposed beams, hard hat, secured goggles glinting. A small, certain smile plays at the corners of my mouth. Miss Morgan, where do you want the drywall stacked, Rico? The site foreman calls over the machinery. Along the east wall, I answer, gesturing toward the spot where my grandmother's sideboard once stood. Make sure it's covered if rain's coming. Dad and Mom step out of the car like cautious explorers entering foreign ground. Dad's expression hardens as he takes in the heavy equipment scattered across what used to be a manicured lawn. Mom lifts a trembling hand to her mouth, her eyes sweeping the property with disbelief. What have you done? Dad's voice cuts across the yard, rising above the scream of a circular saw biting through lumber. I walk toward them with measured steps, my work boots crunching over gravel. I told you, I say evenly. 9-month renovation. Everything down to the studs. They follow me through the open frame of the front door, their footsteps faltering as they cross into what used to be the living room. Exposed beams stretch overhead. The fireplace is gutted to its brick shell. Bare subfloor replaces the polished hardwood that once gleamed beneath family dinners and unspoken resentments. This is insanity. Mom whispers, her voice barely audible over the contractor's radio, humming a faint classic rock tune. You've destroyed it. Ah, I correct softly. I'm rebuilding it. my vision, my timeline. Dad's eyes sweep across the stripped interior, assessing the damage like a balance sheet. Gabrielle, this is excessive. Stop this now, and we can still make arrangements for Vanessa's family. I laugh short, sharp, echoing off the naked studs. That's not happening. His expression darkens, storm clouds gathering in familiar patterns. You've never understood family obligation. I can cut you out of the will entirely. The threat hangs there, heavy practiced. 6 months ago, that sentence would have gutted me. I would have scrambled to make peace to earn back conditional love. Now, I just nod. You already did, I say calmly, when I refused to co-sign Mark's failed real estate deal last year. The color drains from his face. Mom gasps softly. Vanessa mentioned it. I continue picking up a set of blueprints from the makeshift drafting table. During one of her attempts to get money for their down payment, said you'd already rewritten the will to protect family assets. Her words, not mine. Mom's eyes brim with tears, the kind that once worked like clockwork to unravel me. Gabrielle, please, she pleads, voice quivering. Think of the children I am, I reply, turning to Rico. How's the children's reading nook coming along? The built-ins are framed, he says, gesturing toward the far corner. Should look just like your drawings once we're done. I watch the confusion flicker across my mother's face, blooming slowly into disbelief. For the foster youth program, I explain evenly, the same one that received the $12,000 from the furniture auction. Dad's eyes narrow. Vanessa said you sold family heirlooms, furniture left on property that wasn't hers, I correct. Everything was properly documented by the auction house. Very public process. Mom clutches Dad's arm as if bracing for impact. Charles. She hisses, she's made us look terrible. People are talking. I pull out my phone and open social media, scrolling to Vanessa's deleted posts, the ones lamenting her homeless family. I show them the screen where hundreds of comments remain praising the donation made in their name. Public shaming doesn't work when people know the truth, I say, slipping the phone back into my pocket. Dad straightens posture, stiffening into the stance I've seen in 100 boardrooms. Let's discuss options. Then, he says evenly, perhaps we can reach a compromise. A shift from demands to diplomacy. Progress, however slight. The renovation continues as planned, I reply, nodding toward a worker carefully removing old family photos from a wall, slated for demolition tomorrow. But I'm willing to help Vanessa find housing within her budget. Mom's tone softens, the entitlement draining away. That would be appreciated. My phone buzzes again, the security company confirming no further unauthorized entries since last week. Another notification from the auction house official, donation receipt tax deductible. And one more from my contractor, photos of the new back deck coming together, wood gleaming under the late afternoon sun. As we stand amid the exposed framework of my home, I catch Dad studying the blueprints with reluctant respect. He recognizes precision planning, purpose, things he can't dismiss. Have you ever had to reinvent a space to reclaim it? I ask quietly. Sometimes you have to strip everything back to build something real. Neither of them answers. Before the silence stretches too far, my phone rings again. Mark's name appears on the screen. Excuse me, I say, stepping outside to take it. His voice is subdued, thinner than usual. Gabrielle. I wanted to apologize for my part in all this. I should have spoken up sooner. Through the window, I watched my parents walking back toward their car, their steps slower, shoulders lower, their certainty finally fractured. Sometimes the hardest foundations to pour, I tell him, are the ones that support our boundaries. But they're the most important. Behind me, the steady rhythm of hammers and saws continues transforming this space beam by beam into something entirely mine. 3 months later, the formal dining room glows amber in the fading light. Shadows stretch across my parents' Persian rug. The table setting feels like déjà vu. Same burgundy napkins, same crystal glasses scattering light in tiny rainbows, the same tension lingering like static in the air. 3 months into the lake house renovation, I accepted this dinner invitation knowing exactly what awaited me. Your mother made her special pot roast, Dad says, carving the meat with practiced precision. His tone is careful, rehearsed, the prelude to a negotiation. Just like you always liked. It smells wonderful, Mom. I smooth the napkin across my lap, noting the extra place settings. Are we expecting company? Mom and Dad exchange that familiar glance, the silent signal that always preceded some small betrayal. We thought it would be nice to have a family dinner, Mom says gently, placing a generous serving on my plate. It's been difficult with everyone scattered. The doorbell chimes. Dad's shoulders ease, the faintest hint of relief crossing his face. Reinforcements have arrived. I'll get it, Mom says, touching his arm as she rises. The instant she disappears down the hallway, Dad leans forward, his voice lowering into that practiced, persuasive tone I remember from boardroom calls I overheard as a teenager. Gabrielle, I've been talking with the Hendersons. You remember John, my golf partner? He thinks what you're doing is rather harsh. I take a slow sip of water, letting the pause stretch. I wasn't aware the Hendersons were stakeholders in my property. Community matters, Gabrielle. People talk. Yes, they certainly do. I set my glass down with care, the sound crisp against the linen. They talked when I handled the flood damage alone 3 years ago. Not a single offer of help then. Before he can respond, voices drift from the foyer, Mom's gentle warmth, another tone, answering measured and familiar. She returns a moment later with Pastor Williams, our family's longtime spiritual advisor, and not coincidentally, one of the few people whose opinion I've ever valued. Gabrielle, it's wonderful to see you, Pastor Williams says, settling into the chair beside mine. Your mother tells me you've been quite busy with renovations. Transformative ones, I say, evenly recognizing the setup. My parents have always known how to orchestrate a scene, how to assemble the illusion of impartial counsel. Mom places a plate before the pastor, then resumes her seat. We were just discussing family harmony, weren't we? Charles' dad nods, slicing into his pot roast with deliberate precision, and how certain decisions might still be adjusted for the greater good. The children miss their aunt, Mom adds softly. Her tone carefully modulated that familiar register she uses when guilt is the tool of choice. Family needs to stick together, Pastor Williams says gently, especially in difficult times. I realize my fingers have tightened around my fork. The choreography is perfect, the united front, the implied moral failing, the quiet consensus that I am the one who needs to be corrected. Speaking of family, Dad continues, his tone smooth, almost conversational. The Fosters took in their daughter's family last year after a renovation disaster, 8 months under one roof. Barbara says it brought them all closer together. Each word is another brick in the wall of pressure he knows how to build so well, incremental, reasonable, suffocating. Every example carefully chosen to remind me what good families are supposed to do. I reach for my handbag and take out my tablet. I'd like to show you something, I say, my voice, even as I unlock the screen. Since we're discussing renovations. The first image fills the display, my lake house wrapped in scaffolding, its frame encircled like a fortress under reconstruction. I swipe to the next, an interior shot stripped to the studs, workers in hard hats moving purposefully through beams and dust. This was day 1, I explain, swiping again, and this, another flick of my finger, was last week. Pastor Williams leans in, eyebrows raised. My goodness, what a transformation. The later photos reveal rooms unrecognizable from their former lives. What was once a dated 4-bedroom has become a sleek 3-bedroom home with a private office overlooking the water. Floor-to-ceiling windows now frame the lake like a living painting. Reclaimed oak beams cross the vaulted ceiling, their grain echoing the warmth of the new custom floors below. That's the master suite, I say, pausing on the image. The same room Vanessa once called dibs on. The balcony was a structural nightmare, but worth every penny for that sunrise view. Mom's fork stops midair. It's completely different. That was the point. I swipe to a new folder, one labeled Project Documentation. Here's the construction schedule drafted 5 months ago. I continue opening the spreadsheet. And here's the property assessment showing a projected 40% increase in valuation after completion. Out of the corner of my eye, I see the subtle shift in Dad's expression, the businessman surfacing despite himself. Recognition. Respect. This was never about denying Vanessa, I say, setting the tablet gently on the table. It was about honoring my own plans. Plans I made long before her so-called housing emergency. I tap the screen again. Come. I have some older photos you might remember. Or perhaps not. The next series appears storm damage. My lake house half-submerged floodwater swallowing the first floor. Furniture floating. Walls already blooming with mold. $28,000 in emergency repairs, I say, evenly swiping through invoices and receipts. All documented. And here I bring up a screen of messages, my thumb pausing over the familiar blue bubbles, the texts I sent that week, the ones where I asked for help and was told everyone was too busy enjoying their vacation. The room falls utterly silent. Even the clink of cutlery stops. Mom's face drains of color. Dad studies his plate with newfound fascination. Respecting boundaries isn't cruelty, I say, into the silence. It's adulthood. Dad's shoulders sink just slightly, but it's enough. For the first time, I don't see the unshakable patriarch, only a man who recognizes he's been outmaneuvered, the negotiation lost before it began. I should have helped with those repairs, Mom says softly. No qualifications, no expectations attached. It's perhaps the first genuine apology I've ever heard from her. The front door opens, splintering the fragile quiet. Vanessa sweeps in, cheeks flushed with indignation, confidence radiating until she registers the scene before her. Our parents subdued, Pastor Williams, contemplative, my tablet glowing with evidence instead of emotion. What's happening? She demands, confusion overtaking her bravado. Mom said we were discussing the Lakehouse situation. We were? I reply, rising from my chair and collecting my things. I've shared my renovation progress. When it's complete in 6 months, you're all welcome to visit as guests with advance notice. From my purse, I withdraw a small cream envelope and offer it across the table. The housewarming is scheduled for March 12th. I hope you'll attend. No one speaks. The question hangs unasked in the air: who will come, and on what terms? I walk toward the door. My heels click softly against the hardwood, a rhythm that no longer echoes with retreat, but with resolve. Driving away, I glance in the rearview mirror. My parents' house shrinks behind me, its familiar symmetry fading into dusk. Ahead, twilight spills across the horizon, and I picture the lake house alive with construction lights, transformation continuing, whether anyone approves or not. For the first time in my adult life, I feel no guilt, no pull of obligation, only the still certain truth that peace doesn't require surrender. Sometimes it requires a stand. My phone chimes. A text from Rachel, my contractor-turned-friend. Still can't believe we pulled this off. Best project ever. I smile, remembering her expression the day I first shared my plans. You want to gut a perfectly good house? She'd asked, half stunned. Now she brings potential clients to see the finished result, always with permission. Always permission. The doorbell interrupts my reverie. Through the security feed, I see my parents standing awkwardly on the porch. Dad shifting his weight from foot to foot, Mom clutching a small plant. Their first visit since the renovation finished. I press the intercom. Come in, I say, unlocking the door remotely. It's open. They step inside hesitantly, the contrast to that Sunday dinner almost startling. Dad's eyes travel upward, widening at the vaulted ceilings. Mom's linger on the dining table, positioned exactly where Vanessa once insisted would be the perfect homework spot. Gabrielle. This island. Dad begins trailing off at a loss for words, maybe for the first time in his life. Remarkable, Mom finishes, quietly placing the jade plant on the side table like a peace offering. Truly remarkable. I pour coffee into handcrafted mugs and set them before my parents. They move slowly through the open layout, taking in the space. Mom pauses at the photo wall images of mountain trails, design projects, lake sunsets. Not a single family portrait among them. This is who I've become, I say, simply answering the question she doesn't ask. Dad studies the joinery of the staircase, the precision of the light fixtures, his businessman's mind acknowledging craftsmanship and cost. You've created something remarkable here, he admits, echoing Mom without realizing it. The moment lingers, bittersweet recognition that sometimes growth requires distance. Later that evening, I host an impromptu gathering. Rachel brings champagne. The security company sends a gift basket with a note. For our most respectful client, the auction house owner stops by, proudly showing photos of the community center now furnished with Vanessa's former heirlooms. The foster youth program director cried when we delivered everything, he tells me. Said it was their first matching furniture set ever. My phone buzzes again, a text from Vanessa. I'm sorry about the furniture. Can we talk? I consider it, fingers hovering above the screen before I type, dinner next month. Bring dessert. No discussion about moving in. The boundary holds firm, but not cold. Protection, with room for possibility. After everyone leaves, Dad pauses at the door. Respecting boundaries isn't cruelty. It's adulthood, he says quietly, quoting my own words back to me. His acknowledgement feels like the last renovation completed. When night falls, I walk alone down to the dock. The sunset shifts from gold to violet, the colors rippling across the water. My reflection glows steady and whole against the changing sky. Peace, I've learned, doesn't mean surrendering boundaries. It means honoring them. And in this sanctuary rebuilt by my own hands, shaped by my own vision, I've finally found both.